Have you ever noticed how sometimes the smartest people you know, people with just massive amounts of knowledge, totally struggle to make any real-world impact? Well, welcome to this explainer where we're going to explore a massive paradigm shift. We'll unpack exactly why that disconnect happens, and more importantly, we're going to look at how you can permanently shift your internal operating system from, a purely theoretical existence to a gritty, reality-based methodology. If you've ever felt like you have all the potential in the world, you've read all the right books, you've got the brilliant ideas, but you just can't seem to make it materialize into something real, well, stick around, because you are in exactly the right place. So let's start with this fascinating paradox. Why is it that incredibly smart, high-achieving individuals are so good at constructing these perfect mental worlds, but then completely paralyze themselves when it comes to actually leaving a mark on the physical one? I mean, we see this all the time, right? It's the brilliant coder who's been refining an app for 5 years, but never actually ships a product. Or the visionary with $1 million business plan, perfectly formatted in a spreadsheet, who never even bothers to register an LLC. On paper, they are brilliant. They've analyzed literally every possible angle. Yet, they remain totally stuck. They're building magnificent empires in their minds, but if you look at their actual lives, well, very little is actually being built. So why does this happen?
That brings us to our first main point, the trap of ideals.
Let's really dive into this paradox by looking at the hidden trap of the hyper-intelligent mind. You see, it turns out that intelligence, while obviously a massive advantage, can also act as this incredibly sophisticated defense mechanism. We call this the Platonic mindset. Overthinkers often use this mindset as a literal psychological shield. They hide out in theoretical perfection because, well, it lets them avoid the inevitable friction, the exposure, and the very real potential for failure that comes with actual execution. Think about the psychological comfort of that for a second. Inside your mind, your business plan never goes bankrupt. Your relationships are never messy. Your skills are universally praised. Your ego is perfectly safe because, hey, if you never actually launch, the market can never reject you. It's this flawless, super comfortable fortress. But it's also a prison that completely cuts you off from interacting with the real world. The fatal flaw of this mindset boils down to this really simple idea. The ideal is just a map, but reality is the actual territory. The Platonic thinker tries to force this chaotic, opportunistic, entirely unpredictable reality into a rigid, romanticized little mold. And what happens? Absolutely constant frustration when the real world simply refuses to play along. I mean, you can't navigate a dense, overgrown jungle by getting mad that the trees aren't perfectly aligned like they are on your neatly drawn map. It just doesn't work that way. The map is helpful, sure, but the territory plays by its own rules.
Moving on to Section 2, Platonic versus Architect mindset.
This creates a really stark contrast between two fundamentally different ways of navigating life and achieving actual power. We're looking at the shift from being a Platonic thinker to becoming what we call the architect. While the Platonic thinker stays static, isolated, and cozy inside their flawless mental fortress, the architect steps outside. The architect willingly embraces the exposure and the messy friction required to actually interact with the world. The architect completely understands that a B- plan executed today is infinitely more powerful than an A+ plan executed never. True creation is dynamic, and yeah, it's messy. They don't mind getting dirt on their hands because they know that is literally the only way a building actually goes up.
And this points to a massive misconception about independence among hyper-intelligent people. So many folks think that achieving total independence, needing absolutely no one, trusting no one, totally isolating themselves, is the ultimate end goal. But mere independence is a trap. It's supposed to be a launching pad, not the final destination. Because when you isolate yourself, you are cutting off vital information, resources, and crucial feedback from the real world. True architectural power demands something different. It demands sovereign interdependence. This means taking your really strong independent core and combining it with the external world to build something way bigger than you ever could alone. You willingly step into the chaos, but you maintain your internal sovereignty while doing it. Which naturally leads us to Section 3. Action equals truth.
Okay, so how does an architect actually navigate this chaotic terrain? Well, to build effectively in the real world, the architect has to adopt a super clinical method for reading reality. They deliberately strip away the noise of human emotions, spoken words, and claimed intentions. And it all comes down to this absolutely crucial core doctrine: action equals truth. This is your ultimate filter, the singular, reliable metric for understanding the world, the people around you, and frankly, even yourself, is observable behavior. It is never internal feelings. It's never spoken promises. Words are incredibly cheap, but action action requires a real, measurable expenditure of energy. Let's face it, humans are consummate actors. We are so exceptionally good at using words to project an ideal version of ourselves, but our true motives, they are constantly leaking out through our physical actions. As an architect, you have got to stop playing the psychologist who tries to guess how people are feeling inside. Instead, start acting like a biologist, observing raw behavior in a laboratory. If someone promises you the moon, but their footsteps consistently lead in the exact opposite direction, believe the footsteps. Observe their physical responses. Look at where they actually invest their time and their money. The body is the ultimate filter of truth. You have to judge every single situation strictly by the friction and the output it produces in reality, not the nice story it tells. All right, let's jump into Section 4, Transmuting Talent into Power. So now that we know how to read the real world objectively, how do we actually impose our will upon it? Well, the world is absolutely full of highly talented, yet completely unfulfilled people. I mean, we all know someone who is easily the smartest person in the room, but has absolutely nothing to show for it, right? Why is that? It's because talent, all by itself, is merely a static resource. It is completely devoid of kinetic value until it undergoes intense pressure and is forced into practical utility. Talent is just unrefined coal sitting inert in the ground. Real-world power is the diamond that only gets created under immense pressure. So here is the exact process. Through the mechanics of transmutation, you literally have to force your innate, static talent through the messy, highly uncomfortable friction of market needs and execution. What does that friction look like? The friction is a client telling you no. The friction is realizing your initial code has a massive bug in it. The friction is the market completely ignoring your first launch. It is only when your static abilities violently collide with these demands of the real world that you finally forge kinetic, real-world power. You have to take that raw material sitting in your head, subject it to the friction of reality, and force it to solve an actual problem in the physical world. Now, don't get me wrong, this execution isn't about blind, impulsive action. The architect process demands immense discipline. First off, you have to suspend your immediate judgment of events. When something happens, don't rush to label it as a total disaster or a massive triumph. Next, you must tolerate that uncertainty so you can gather real intelligence. Watch what people do, not what they say. Then define a crystal clear objective so you can effectively filter out all that irrelevant noise and distraction. And finally, you strike decisively, but you only do it when the behavioral pattern of reality is undeniable. You act strategically and heavily, never just reactively. And finally, Section 5, the ideal as a compass. As we synthesize this entire blueprint of the architect, a really vital question emerges about those perfect ideals we used to hold so tightly in our minds. We're at a critical crossroads here. If the Platonic ideal is a trap, and reality is defined by gritty, opportunistic action, does the architect just toss out all ideals entirely? Do we just throw away our vision of perfection and become pure, ruthless cynics who only care about cold, hard output? The answer is a resounding no. You definitely do not abandon your ideals. Rather, you completely redefine how you use them. You have to use the ideal strictly as a navigational compass for direction, and absolutely not as a cozy little house to hide inside. A compass is vital, right? It tells you which way is true north. It points you toward excellence, integrity, and your ultimate goals. But staring down at a compass isn't going to magically clear the thick mud from the actual terrain you have to walk through.
Think of it kind of like this. You are the rider, and your emotions and the chaotic world around you are the beast beneath you. You have to maintain your sovereignty by feeling the raw emotion of the beast, but simultaneously holding the reins tightly with your intellect. Use your ideal to set your destination, but be fully 100% prepared to walk through the heavy, messy mud of reality to actually get there. True victory isn't about everything going perfectly according to your pristine mental map. No way. Victory is executing your will despite the chaos. It's about actively sculpting the real world rather than just running away from it. We'll wrap up this explainer by challenging you to make that ultimate shift today. It is time to stop perfecting that flawless, completely impossible blueprint in your mind. Take your raw talent, step right out into the uncomfortable friction, and finally get your hands dirty building in the actual terrain. So ask yourself, what are you going to build today in this messy, imperfect, but incredibly malleable reality? The real world is out there, and it's waiting for your architecture. Keep building.